I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?
We discussed it at every conference that we had in the military. There's always things like that going on. Flying saucers and we've had other things, you know, if I'm not mistaken.
There's new DNA information on the Paracas elongated skulls. That's a group of skulls, 300 of them, that were excavated in Peru in 1928. Now, you can see from the pictures that they're abnormal looking. There's 300 of these skulls that were found buried together, and they all have these abnormal heads. And
so my first reaction when I saw this was, oh, but there are some cultures where this is considered beautiful, and cultures actually elongate their skulls.
Yes.
But tell us a little bit about why that is not the explanation for this.
Well, this is what they're finding. First of all, in regards to that, the capacity inside the skull is larger than a normal human skull. So if they were to do that, what you're talking about, it would reshape the skull, but it wouldn't change the volume of the brain inside the skull. These are 25% larger and 60% heavier. That much.
Ooh, 60%.
Yeah.
It's a huge difference.
And that alone is enough to make you go, whoa, what's going on there? But the DNA evidence that came out, to put this in perspective, these skulls are 3,000 years old, and the pyramids of Egypt are around 4,000 years old. And what they came out with was this. The researcher, who is named Brian Forster, he hired a DNA geneticist to look into this, who said this: it had mitochondrial DNA with mutations unknown in any human, primate, or animal known so far. But a few fragments I was able to sequence from this sample indicate that if these mutations will hold, we are dealing with a new human-like creature, very distant from the Homo sapiens, Neanderthals, and Denisovans. I am not sure it will even fit into the known evolutionary tree. What?
Scientists hypothesized that a sign of intelligent extraterrestrials could reside within the human genetic code. Dr. Vladimir Cherbak, a mathematician at the Alfa-Raba Kazakh National University of Kazakhstan, and Maxim A. Makakov, an astrobiologist at Kazakhstan's Fesenkov Astrophysical Institute, recently published a paper titled The Wow Signal of the Terrestrial Genetic Code in the planetary science journal Icarus. This title references the famous unidentified radio signal detected by SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, scientists in 1977. But rather than listening for extraterrestrial radio transmissions, these scientists considered the possibility of biological SETI. Seeing that features in the human genetic code defy natural explanation, the team considered the possibility of an intelligent embedded signal in the code. And, as Discover News explains, the researchers believe the scheme has much greater longevity and chance of detecting ET than a transient extraterrestrial radio transmission. It has been repeatedly proposed to expand the scope for SETI and one of the suggested alternatives to radio is the biological media. Genomic DNA is already used on Earth to store non-biological information. Though smaller in capacity, but stronger in noise immunity is the genetic code. The code is a flexible mapping between codons and amino acids, and this flexibility allows modifying the code artificially. But once fixed, the code might stay unchanged over cosmological timescales. In fact, it is the most durable construct known. Therefore it represents an exceptionally reliable storage for an intelligent signature, if that conforms to biological and thermodynamic requirements. As the actual scenario for the origin of terrestrial life is far from being settled, the proposal that it might have been seeded intentionally cannot be ruled out. A statistically strong intelligent-like signal in the genetic code is then a testable consequence of such scenario. These scientists assert that the genetic code appears to have been invented outside the solar system already several billions years ago. Discover News points out that this notion endorses the idea of panspermia life on Earth was seeded by life that's originated elsewhere in the universe. By exploring the possibilities of biological SETI, these researchers are contemplating the typically religious notion of intelligent design, but from an extraterrestrial scientific standpoint.
A lot of contacts in the media, as viewers and listeners know, and I have been able to secure a copy of an early script, and it follows very closely from the trailer I've seen and other leaks. And I'm not going to give the entire film away here, but in synopsis, this is a film about the origins of humankind with a super race of near immortal genetic engineers who are contemplating a genetic overwrite or rewrite of the planet Earth when meddling humans stumble in to the magician's laboratory. They are punished for their trespass.
It was so wrong.
The so-called space jockey is the advanced species that have engineered humans back on Earth and produced the bioweapon that we know of as the classical alien that burst out of your chest after feeding on the food in your intestines. The reason we're taking time out to examine Prometheus is because its storyline, its plot, mirrors that of many ancient societies. And the ideas presented in Prometheus are at the core of Western secret societies.
These are ancient civilizations that were separated by centuries, and yet this same pictogram was discovered in every one of them.
Please tell me you can read that.
I think they want us to come and find them.
Across the world, we see evidence of early civilizations' obsession with what they believed were off-world influences. From the Nazca lines in South America to the pyramids of Egypt, we see artifacts, testament to early man's obsession with off-world manipulators. Every ancient culture believed they were communicating with men from the sky. Ezekiel with spinning wheels of fire landing and creatures with blue space helmets approaching Ezekiel and giving him a drug to take, and then he has wild hallucinations. One could say that Prometheus is simply art imitating life and putting a 21st century spin on the beliefs of the Dogon tribe in Africa and the Aztecs of Mesoamerica. Eric von Däniken, more than any other living person, has popularized the idea of chariots of the gods and that our planet has been visited and manipulated by off-world creatures for thousands of years. But the systems that he popularized were regurgitated whole cloth from ideas developed by the ruling class of this planet. And I want to be clear, every major globalist we look at, going back more than 160 years, is completely and totally obsessed with the idea that off-world aliens are controlling this planet and giving them hidden knowledge. By the 1870s, T.H. Huxley Group and their X Club was dominating the Royal Society in England. The dominant theory within the X Club was that humans had been seeded here, along with most other life forms, by advanced beings from space. from the inception of Darwin's theory on the origin of species. Evolutionary scientists never believed for a minute that life simply started on its own, that evolution is not some random, slow system developing by chance, but is actually directed by off-world seeders, terraformers, creators of worlds. Even the discoverer of DNA, Francis Crick, promotes the idea that life was seeded on this planet in what he calls directed panspermia. It is part of the larger myth of transhumanism. Huxley, Darwin, Wedgwood, the Galtons, they all interbred in an attempt to create this transcendent Superman. The governing class of this globe believes that they are channeling advanced technological systems given to them by ancient alien species. And the science fiction of the last 150 years, whether Jules Verne or H.G. Wells or those that came before them, is obsessed with this, and they're on record part of secret societies who believe what they're promoting is actually reality, but knowing that the public is not ready to accept it, they cover it under the guise of fiction. And the film Prometheus is completely constructed around the secret religion of the Illuminati, who believe that they are transcendent and becoming the Superman.
We can create cybernetic individuals. We are the gods now.
Blurring the lines between fiction and reality, we see a futuristic presentation of the technology conference TED. The keynote speaker is the founder of the Wayland Corporation, Mr. Wayland. There he describes Prometheus stealing fire from the gods.
From the Titan Prometheus, our first true piece of technology, fire.
The transference of fire, or the first technology to man, is only the beginning of his transgressions. Prometheus is a Titan and the creator of mankind who attempts to elevate humans to the level of gods and is punished. The Illuminati believe they have stolen the fire of true genius from the gods.
Biotech, nanotech, fusion.
As man attempts to become godlike, we release potential forces that can and probably will destroy us. I want to say this in summation. We're not facing off-world genetic engineers that the elite believes created this planet, whether that's true or not. We're facing the global technocrats that are splicing every plant and animal and insect you can imagine together, that are creating chimeras with hundreds of species within them, giving rise to superviruses and bacterial mutations. We are already seeing within 3 generations in rodents total sterilization and massive deformities in these animals. And we have proven from the Rockefeller Foundation documents and other reports that this is part of a long-term program to wreck the general public's DNA. This is the global elite who have fantasized about off-world genetic engineers, creating them actually in a 160-year-plus program, developing the sciences and technologies to put this into place. Whatever you say about the Illuminati, they have got patience and they have had incredible vision. But I believe humanity needs to hear the truth and understand this is being carried out against us all. Because we have a choice to stand up now, but only a short window, and say no. I know the plot of the film. I know how it ends. But I'm going to leave that for you to discover. The point is, the film itself is only a revelation of the method, an externalization of the hierarchy.
What fascinates me on this planet is the diverse, many different races we have here. Is it because of environment and locale, or are these all... I've always thought about this.
The more we look at the different race groups on planet Earth, you know, we call ourselves the human race, but we're not one race. We're distinctly several different race groups. That becomes very interesting and often a very sensitive subject, but something that needs to be discussed openly without, you know, racial prejudice and so forth. So it becomes more and more compelling. The evidence becomes overwhelming that we did not really evolve to this point in time we somehow were manipulated into this point in time.
There were for a specific reason, no doubt.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, some evolutionists, Michael, would say, George, don't use the word popped up. We evolved, yet it's pretty convincing that we kind of just showed up all of a sudden, isn't it?
This cradle of humankind that is being sold to the world doesn't have any human skeletons in it. We have hominids in there, Australopithecus africanus and Mrs. Bless and Littlefoot, and wonderful examples of over 500 fossils that have been excavated from the Sterkfontein caves, just sort of northwest of Johannesburg. Over 500 fossils, if I've got it right. But they're all hominids, no human skeletons there. So these are all the supposedly pre-human evolutionary states. They are not human. This has become a very hot political debate in South Africa because some people believe that you've become a racist and you're drawing racial lines. It's got nothing to do with that. You've got to call it what it is. You've got to call it as you find it. You can't start becoming politically sensitive to one group or another.
No, this is anthropology. Are these all various races from other extraterrestrials that have been here and, they've manipulated in their own image? So the Asian person, the Caucasian, the African, they are in the image of the extraterrestrial that came to this planet a long time ago. Have you ever thought of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And once again, you obviously give this stuff a great deal of thought, and I think you put your finger right on the button one more time. Again, I look at this scientifically, genetically, and ecologically. If we only appeared as a species 250,000 years ago, not enough time has passed for these different race groups to have evolved. And I don't care what anybody throws at you, it's just not going to happen because the strength of the genetic pool that keeps the Asian person Asian is so strong that it defies any kind of argument or scientific or a genetic evolution into that. It just doesn't make any sense. And the same goes with African people. The strength of the gene pool of African defies the movement away from that into somebody like me who's got a little pale skin and gets burnt when I run into the sun. You know? It doesn't make any sense, and there's not enough time that has passed on Earth for us to have evolved so dramatically into these 3 or 4 distinctly different race groups. And that's why when I said earlier we call ourselves the human race, well, we're not really the human race because we are not one race group. We are 3 or 4, possibly more distinctly different race groups. But the obvious ones are the Caucasians, the Asians, the Chinese. I suppose when I say Asian, I mean the Chinese type look, and then the Black African, and that is fascinating stuff because it becomes a melting pot of debate. That what is interesting is earlier this year, I think it was in February, Craig Venter, the sort of so-called father of the Human Genome Project, gave a speech which blew everyone's mind, and it certainly blew my mind because he mentioned some startling facts. Until very recently, we were all sold the story that all humans are 99.9% genetically the same, identical. Well, that is no longer the case. Okay, with the Human Genome Project studies, they found out that between people and especially different race groups, there is up to a 2 or a 3% difference in their genetic structure.
And that's a big difference, isn't it?
It's a huge difference.
It's almost, Michael, as if they all came from different places in the universe.
That's certainly what it seems like. It seems like they might have been a prototype kind of person built here, and then another group by one group of extraterrestrial settlers for a specific purpose. the cloning of the humans by the Anunnaki. Many of your listeners will be very familiar with that. That seems to be a specific point in time, and possibly with some of the earliest human manipulation or manipulation of this new species called Homo sapien.
We talk about just how we evolved on this planet. You know, we're talking about the work of Zecharia Sitchin and his theories of the 12th planet. Robert Safier does a very thorough job trying to coordinate all the various people who are talking about this. And it's growing, I think. It's growing, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger.